In the tumultuous world of international relations, a new development is causing even the most confident experts to reconsider. A recent US law aimed at curbing Chinese economic expansion has unexpectedly turned against those who sought to chart new frontiers for humanity. Now, NASA's space program finds itself facing unforeseen obstacles on its path to the stars. At first glance, the stringent sanctions appeared to target only the economic sector, protecting American companies from unfair competition. However, their effects have extended into areas where collaboration was once deemed more important than political disagreements. Interaction with Chinese space specialists, joint projects, and technology exchanges are all now under threat. How will this unexpected situation impact NASA's long-term plans? Will the agency find a way through this maze of sanctions and continue its ambitious projects? US sanctions against China have become increasingly stringent and multi-layered in recent years, covering various aspects of economic and political relations between the two largest global powers. The primary goals of these sanctions include protecting US national security, curbing Chinese influence in high-tech sectors, and preventing espionage and theft of intellectual property. One of the key components of US sanction policy is the restriction of advanced technology exports to China. These measures aim to prevent Chinese companies and government entities from accessing technologies that could be used for military or intelligence purposes. Specifically, the US has imposed restrictions on the export of semiconductors, microelectronics, and other critical components. The US administration also maintains blacklists of Chinese companies such as Huawei and ZTE, banning American firms from supplying them with technology without special permission. Huawei and ZTE are suspected of collaborating with the Chinese government and using their technologies for intelligence gathering, which raises concerns in Washington. As a result of being blacklisted, Huawei, for instance, has faced significant difficulties, including losing access to key American technologies such as Google's Android operating system and Qualcomm semiconductors. This has forced the company to accelerate the development of its own solutions, such as the Harmony OS operating system and Kirin processors. However, the restrictions have affected Huawei's global competitiveness, particularly in the smartphone and networking equipment sectors. Additionally, US actions have prompted retaliatory measures from China, which has begun creating its own blacklists of foreign companies and increasing support for its own tech giants. Another aspect is the restriction of Chinese companies' involvement in the development of 5G networks in various countries. The US actively encourages its allies to avoid using Huawei and ZTE equipment in their infrastructures, citing national security threats. As a result, many countries, including the UK, Australia, and Japan, have joined these efforts, limiting or completely banning the use of Chinese equipment in their 5G networks. Sanctions also affect the financial sector. The US has imposed bans on investments in certain Chinese companies that, according to the US government, have ties to the Chinese military or are involved in human rights abuses. These measures include prohibiting the purchase of stocks and bonds of such companies, as well as providing them with financial services. Financial restrictions are aimed at undermining the economic power of companies that may pose a threat to US national security. Another important goal of the sanctions is to limit cooperation in fields related to advanced technologies, such as artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotechnology, and space research. These measures are intended to prevent China from using American scientific achievements and developments to strengthen its strategic position. Specifically, American universities and research institutions have received strict guidelines regarding collaboration with Chinese counterparts and joint research. The US also seeks to undermine China's positions in international organizations and limit its influence in strategically important regions. These efforts include diplomatic pressure on allies and partners to also impose sanctions on China or support American initiatives to contain Chinese influence. One of the unexpected consequences of this policy has been the restriction of cooperation in the space sector. China is actively developing its space program and aiming for leadership in this field. Limiting access to American technologies and joint projects may slow down Chinese achievements, but also creates challenges for global collaboration, which has been accustomed to knowledge and technology exchange without political barriers. In 2023, China spent $12 billion on developing its space program and plans to increase this budget to $20 billion by 2025. The introduction of US sanctions against China has a significant impact on NASA's operations, particularly in terms of international collaboration and scientific data exchange. The space agency has always pursued global partnerships to advance its missions, and the restrictions placed on interactions with Chinese experts have become a serious impediment. One key area affected is scientific research collaboration. According to the Wolf Amendment, enacted in 2011, NASA and the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy are prohibited from any bilateral contact with Chinese governmental institutions and companies. Although this restriction existed before the current sanctions, it has become more stringent in the current political climate. As a result, NASA has lost the opportunity to participate in joint missions and projects with the China National Space Administration, CNSA, which in turn has slowed the exchange of critical scientific data. These restrictions lead to delays in scientific research and development. For example, the Chinese Chang'e 4 mission to explore the far side of the Moon could have been an excellent platform for international data exchange and collaboration. However, due to the sanctions, American scientists are unable to work directly with their Chinese counterparts, limiting access to unique information and slowing progress in lunar exploration. The punitive measures also affect technological development. China is a leading producer of rare earth metals, which are crucial for creating high-tech components used in space technology. Restrictions on the import of these materials from China could lead to shortages of essential resources and increase the cost of development for NASA. In 2022, imports of rare earth metals from China to the US accounted for about 80% of the total volume, highlighting the extent of American industry's dependence on Chinese supplies. Moreover, the sanctions create financial and logistical difficulties. With international collaboration limited, NASA is forced to increase spending on domestic development and testing, which raises the agency's overall budget. For instance, in 2023, NASA's budget was increased by $1.6 billion, a significant portion of which was allocated to offset the costs associated with the restrictions on international collaboration. Thus, US sanctions against China significantly complicate NASA's activities, affecting its collaboration opportunities, scientific data exchange, and technological developments. These measures slow progress in scientific research and increase the agency's financial and logistical costs, potentially having a long-term impact on its missions and projects. China is rapidly advancing its space programs, showcasing ambitious plans and significant achievements that place it in direct competition with the United States. The Chinese space program, managed by the China National Space Administration, CNSA, continues to gain momentum, astonishing the world with new projects and accomplishments. A key element of China's space program is the construction and operation of its own space station, Tiangong, Heavenly Palace. The first module of the station, Tianhe, Harmony of the Heavens, was successfully launched into orbit in April 2021, and by the end of 2022, the station was fully completed with the launch of the Wentian and Mengtian modules. China plans to use this station for a wide range of scientific research, including experiments in biology, physics, and materials science. China is also actively developing its satellite programs. In 2021, China launched over 40 satellites, including Earth observation satellites, telecommunications satellites, and Beidou navigation satellites. This system, similar to the American GPS, provides high-precision positioning and is already used both domestically and internationally. In January 2019, China successfully landed the lunar rover Chang'e 4 on the far side of the Moon, marking a historic event. In 2020, the Chang'e 5 mission returned lunar soil samples to Earth for the first time since 1976, when Soviet scientists achieved this feat. China's Martian program is equally impressive. In 2021, China became the second country after the United States to successfully land a rover on Mars with the Tianwen-1 mission. The Chinese rover, Zhurong, began exploring the Martian surface, collecting valuable data on the planet's geology and climate. How far can these ambitions go? China's space achievements inevitably lead to increased competition with the United States in the space sector. While NASA faces challenges due to sanctions and restrictions, China continues to strengthen its position. This rivalry is evident not only in scientific research but also in the economy. China is actively engaging other countries in cooperation, offering its space technologies and services, thus expanding its influence on the international stage. The US and China view space as a strategic domain for ensuring national security and technological superiority. Therefore, the development of space programs remains a priority for both powers, despite all challenges and restrictions. The restrictions imposed by US sanctions against China significantly impact international space cooperation. These measures not only complicate bilateral contacts between the US and China, but also create obstacles for broader international projects involving multiple countries. One of the most noticeable issues caused by the sanctions is the threat to joint space projects. For instance, China and the European Space Agency, ESA, previously considered collaborating under the Chang'e program. However, under pressure from the US, such initiatives may be cancelled or significantly restricted. The sanctions also limit technology exchange, which is critical for progress in the space industry. In a globalized world, many countries rely on each other's technological advancements. However, due to the sanctions, American companies and research institutions are unable to collaborate with their Chinese counterparts in key areas such as developing new materials, navigation systems, and communication technologies. The restrictions on cooperation also negatively affect new initiatives. For example, plans to create an international lunar base, which could involve both the US and China, face significant obstacles. Without the ability to share technologies and resources, such projects become much more complex and costly. This may lead to ambitious goals for lunar and deep space exploration being postponed indefinitely. Political barriers caused by sanctions complicate interactions between countries at all levels. Space diplomacy, which plays a crucial role in building trust and partnerships, is under threat. However, despite these challenges, the international community continues to seek ways to maintain cooperation. Some countries, such as Russia and EU member states, are trying to act as intermediaries and create new platforms for interaction. These efforts aim to mitigate the negative effects of the sanctions and ensure the continued exchange of knowledge and technology. US sanctions against China have significant political and economic consequences, especially within the context of the space industry. These measures exacerbate tensions between the two largest global powers, affecting their interactions not only in the realm of science and technology, but also in broader political and economic relations. Politically, the sanctions worsen existing disagreements between the US and China. Washington views the rapid growth of China's space program as a threat to its global leadership in space. In response to the sanctions, China may harden its stance and adopt a more aggressive policy toward the US, increasing cooperation with other countries like Russia and India, which are also developing their space programs. This could lead to the formation of new geopolitical alliances and heightened global confrontations. The economic consequences of the sanctions are also significant. In 2022, the bilateral trade volume between the US and China was about $650 billion, with the space sector being just a part of this extensive economic relationship. Restrictions on exports and cooperation in space could impact supply chains for high-tech products, increasing their costs and creating shortages of essential components. China might respond by reducing its dependency on American technologies. One example is the Made in China program, aimed at developing domestic production of high-tech products, including space equipment. In 2021, China invested about $10 billion in its space program, and these investments are likely to increase in response to the sanctions. Strengthening domestic production and developing alternative technologies could make China's space program more independent and resilient to external pressures. China's countermeasures and ongoing tensions could have broad implications for the global economy. Intensified trade wars and technology export restrictions may slow down global technological progress and increase the costs of developing new products. This could also impact international companies that do business with both the US and China, forcing them to reassess their strategic plans and investments. Private space companies such as SpaceX and Blue Origin in the US, as well as Chinese companies like CASI, China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, also face repercussions. Restrictions on international collaboration could slow down their projects and increase development costs. In 2023, investments in private space companies totaled over $8 billion, and further tightening of sanctions could negatively impact this rapidly growing market. In the short term, sanctions may continue to restrict collaborative efforts between space agencies from different countries. NASA and CNSA will likely be forced to focus on independent projects, avoiding direct interaction. This could slow down data and technology exchange, which is particularly important for missions requiring international coordination, such as deep space exploration and the establishment of lunar bases. However, new alliances and partnerships might emerge on the horizon. Countries not affected by sanctions such as Russia, India, and the European Union may strengthen their positions in the space community by creating new cooperative projects. For example, joint initiatives between ESA and Roscosmos could become more significant, compensating for the restrictions imposed on the US and China. To ensure continued scientific progress, it is necessary to find ways to overcome existing barriers. One possible solution could be the development of multilateral agreements aimed at fostering the exchange of knowledge and resources among countries involved in space research. Such agreements might include mechanisms to protect intellectual property and national security, thereby reducing political risks and building trust between nations. Despite the sanctions, there is potential for new forms of international cooperation. Major projects, such as establishing lunar and Martian bases, require the combined efforts and resources of many countries. In this context, creating international consortia and joint working groups could help achieve ambitious goals in space exploration. The future of space programs under sanctions remains uncertain but is still full of possibilities. The community must seek new forms of interaction to overcome current challenges and continue to move forward. Scientific progress and space exploration require collaborative efforts, and only through strengthening international partnerships can we reach new heights in exploring the universe. Subscribe to the channel and stay updated with the latest news and trends in space exploration.